November 8th, and we're going to call the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. The administrator would call the roll.
Fagelman?
Here.
Dane? French?
Here.
Gritters? Huser?
Here.
Olson? Payne?
Here.
Solheim?
Here.
And Edie, welcome.
Yeah. Good.
Let's see, we've got an agenda that was distributed. Do we hear a motion for approval?
Move it. Oh, go ahead.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. And the agenda is approved as distributed. Minutes from the October 11, 2018 meeting of the commission were also distributed. Any additions or corrections to those? And do we hear a motion?
Motion for approval of the minutes from
Second.
October.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Hearing none. Those in favor say yes.
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 Those opposed, no. And the minutes are approved. We have no public hearings this evening. We do have one item of new business.
We do have a public hearing.
You know what I did? I just read that from the minutes of the October meeting. We do have a public hearing.
I can't believe you caught him, man. He's usually pretty well prepared. I mean,
You grabbed that wrong piece of paper, you're in trouble. If the administrator would give us a briefing on this item.
Yes. So since the last time the Planning Commission saw this request, it has been changed. As you recall, in August, this was brought forth and the Planning Commission did table the request just based on not really receiving any background information. And then it considered it again in September, and that request was actually denied, once again, just based on deeming it an incomplete application, not knowing the full story, and the applicant potentially wishing to change their request. So tonight you are seeing a new request, and the applicant is requesting approval of a minor subdivision and rezoning of his property located at 1415 Horton Road. So the applicant's parcel is currently approximately 35 acres, and they are requesting to parcel off that homestead piece, which is proposed to be 2.19 acres. Because the minimum lot size in the agricultural zoning district is 3 acres, the applicant is required and requesting to rezone that homestead 2.19 acre piece to R1. The remaining 33 acres will be agricultural still. So the future land use plan does designate the applicant's parcel as agricultural/open space, even though it is surrounded by residential uses. And staff does believe this is because the whole area is generally within the 100-year floodplain. However, within that area, there are bits and pieces, like the applicant's homestead, that is either within the 500-year floodplain or completely seen out of the floodplain. So the city's vision for the property could be seen as residential neighborhoods. However, we'd also envision those 100-year floodplain areas as open space or continued agricultural uses. But we are comfortable with those residential uses in the areas that are developable. So staff is comfortable with the rezoning of this homestead piece, not within the 100-year floodplain, to be rezoned from A1 to R1. And then staff is of the opinion that the request for the minor subdivision is also a reasonable request. So staff does recommend that the Planning Commission open the public hearing and hear public comment on this request. Once again, no public hearing is required for the minor subdivision piece. However, it is required of the rezoning. And then staff does recommend approval of the minor subdivision and rezoning for the property located at 1415 Horton Road.
For the benefit of the commission, I'm on the edge of having a conflict of interest in that Jim Teet was my neighbor up until the flood of 2008. And at the time that we were trying to evacuate personal property out of our home, he and his staff helped us get materials up to his machine shed to keep it out of flood's way. And I'm telling you this, I don't feel like I owe Jim anything, but we were friends and neighbors, and we don't see each other all that much anymore. But it's something that if you think it creates the possibility of a conflict, then I would need to recuse myself and appreciate some opinions.
You might want to talk about the excluded piece, that's your old place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to,
Yeah, the property that shows on the exhibit as excluded, that was the about 5 acres that we owned, that we bought from Jim Teet's mother. His home was across the way and built while we were in residence at the property that's showing as excluded property. Ironically, he put a transit on the main floor of our home and shot the elevation for his home across the road and added 2 feet to it. And the water came within 2 inches of occupying his home as well.
and that whole area could be built up just like he built that area up, because he built that area up when he built his house there too.
Sure.
So any of that area could be built up to put a home on. So, I mean, I think that might be the question, is what the staff was looking at, because it is all in the 100 year, but it could be built up to exclude the 100 year,
So
just like Jim did.
It does depend. A floodplain permit would have to be filled out. Specifically, there's a lot more requirements from the DNR in the 100-year floodplain compared to the 500-year floodplain. And a lot of times the regulations are you're not filling it in such a way that you're affecting someone downstream of you. So this area, I don't think we know the feasibility thus far of how it can be developed. It would probably be master planned in terms of how all the drainage would work. But there are some areas I see that, since there are some larger parcels there, there are some buildable areas now.
Even
I
the
guess for
driveway,
future
though, would have
development.
issues with high water, doesn't it? I mean, the water,
Oh, yeah.
I go
it's
by
in the
that
flood-
every day.
The driveway's in the floodplain.
hard to access at times. From your perspective, though, Hank, I don't personally see with what you explained as it being a conflict of interest, unless there's some type of a financial gain you would have from it. I mean, personally, for that question.
There would be none of that, but perception is always in the mind of the beholder, and
We're also a small community, so each of us knows almost every
Be hard pressed to
party.
not know
It'd be hard to
somebody
not
along the
find
way.
that, some type of a connection there. So that's my personal view on it.
thank you.
I have no problem with it.
I don't have a problem with it.
I don't either, yeah.
Well, then let's move ahead. We'll open the public hearing, and seeing no one to participate, we will close the public hearing. But having that done, how about discussion on this then from members of the commission?
What does this give him to have this changed to R1?
So in our conversations, this is just an estate planning measure. I don't know anything about that. However, otherwise, in his last proposal, he was going to subdivide a 3-acre piece, which is the smallest allowed in the agricultural zoning district. And so once again, we wouldn't have a public hearing at that time. If it were to remain, it would just be the minor subdivision. However, he wanted to go smaller if he could, and therefore he would need to rezone it to a residential use. And just to be clear, there are no typical, I guess, agricultural uses on his homestead property. He does not have the livestock or any of that.
Other questions, comments?
Some of that area is pasture for livestock, but, because I've rented it before in the past for livestock.
I don't see any issues. Can't even imagine what there would be a problem with this.
We used to have a bull that went across the river and got up into Hickory Heights.
Well, we have two motions that ultimately will come out of this discussion. The first is that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the minor subdivision request for 1515 East Bremer Avenue to the City Council. And that would be the first action that we would be asked to consider. And then it's followed up with the other that Rachel talked about.
Okay. I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the minor subdivision request for 1515 East Bremer Avenue to the City Council.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor say yes.
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 Those opposed, no. And the motion is carried. Let's go to the second action. It would be a move that Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the rezoning request from A1 to R1 for parcel I.
L.
L.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the rezoning request from A1 to R1 for parcel L.
I second it.
Again, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just for clarity, it's just the homestead, really. Everything else is still agricultural. Or that's
That's correct.
that, okay.
Any further discussion? Questions? Those in favor indicate yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no, and the motion is carried.
Does it hinder your view?
What's that?
Does it hinder your view? Because you're right across from there, aren't you?
You mean personally?
Yeah.
I don't think I should probably comment on that.
Well, we're talking about people that have conflicts. I thought, okay.
Well, it is, it's already there. It's not
Yeah.
changing.
They're not- nothing's
I'm just
gonna be
kidding.
different.
I'm just trying to get her involved.
Okay, is there any new business come before the commission? And is there any old business to come before the commission? Hearing none.
I move that we adjourn.
Seconded.
Needs no second, we are adjourned.
That was the record time. 14 minutes.
And then I will send out an email here probably next week just to gauge our attendance level at the December meeting. I know with holidays and everything coming up, everything gets busy. However,
Is that the Greetings on Main week or day?
I don't know. I think
We're before, there's always the second.
Oh, it's the second
Thursday? Yeah.
Thursday? Okay.
Rachel, are we still live? Do you need to turn off the, or do you care?